Hey everyone, my name is Jeff Batt. Welcome to Vibe Dojo. Unfortunately, my co-host Destry Hildenbrand can't make it today, but I'm welcomed by one of our guests. I've been looking forward to talking with Mel Milloway for a little while now. Mel, do you want to go ahead and just give yourself an introduction, talk about who you are, or who you work for as well, and then we'll get started into a conversation after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Mel, and I've been in the field of learning for, oh my gosh, it's going to be like over 16 years this coming year. And my background is really kind of like on the verge of like UX, the design side of things, learning technology. And I'm currently at Microsoft and I work with a product team to build AI learning products. So they're products that are powered by AI. And I'm excited to chat with Jeff today and show him some of the personal projects that I worked on and show all of you because I am doing a lot of different things with vibe coding.
Awesome. Yeah, Mel and I actually worked together at Amazon, but we did not actually see each other while we worked at the same time. I was only there for about 2 years, but I've been following Mel for a long time on socials. She provides a lot of great examples, vibe coding examples. We've always kind of been in the same realm, xAPI, coding, different things like that. So I'm excited to see what you have to share today. Usually our conversations are our guests just coming in and sharing what they've done with vibe coding, and then us just kind of asking questions along the way. So I'll really turn the time over to you, Mel, if you want to dive in and kind of share what you have here.
Yeah, sure. So maybe we'll start with a fun one. It's not related to learning, but I can kind of talk through my process because it also applies to what I do in learning. And then we can jump into one that's like more learning and related to like building simulations with vibe coding. So one of the things like I'm very passionate about is 3D printing. And so what I'm currently working on, I'll show you all like my screen so that you can see what this looks like. I'm going to share my entire screen. Okay. So what I'm currently working on, hopefully you can see it. Can you see it, Jeff?
Yeah, yeah, I
Okay.
can see it.
So what I'm working on in Blender right now is I'm creating a sword bookmark, kind of like a fantasy sword that you can like um, change the different colors like of the gem and different things like that and 3D print it. And my process for this is really using my skills that tie into vibe coding to do these kinds of things. So for instance, with this sword, one of the things like I used to do a lot of is graphic design. And so I was like, oh, I wonder if I can create an image of a sword and then create it into like an SVG image. I don't even know if I have it up here. Let's see. So this is kind of like what it looks like right now as like an
Oh, that's
SVG.
cool.
So I create the SVG and I'm like, oh, then I can put it into Blender and I can have AI actually build it out as like a 3D image that I can print. So
So you
oh,
didn't design, like you didn't actually make the 3D model, you just had AI do that for you?
yeah, yeah. So what I
Oh,
do,
wow.
I'll show you actually. So I use Visual Studio Code. Let's do that really quick. And in Visual Studio Code, I'm using Claude Code. So I have the plugin here. And so you can actually do this thing called MCP, so model context protocol, where it connects to Blender. So I'm actually having AI connect over to Blender, and I'm telling AI what to build for me, and it's writing all of the code in Blender to like change things in here. So for instance, it's taking screenshots right now because what it does is it takes screenshots and looks at them and then makes changes. But we could say like change our pink gem to green, which like in 3D printing that's not going to do anything, but like if we want to take pictures of our model or something like that and we just want it to look different, we can do that. So I've said that it's like queued up. So basically, I tell it what to do over here and I give it the SVG. It brings the SVG in here and then it like builds everything live for me.
Oh,
You can
that's
see
so
it.
cool.
It's actually moving and like taking, it will move and take screenshots on its own because I'm very bad at like 3D modeling. But I think like there's all of these skills that we have in e-learning and all these different things that we can pair with vibe coding to get to like our goal. And my goal is like to make a bookmark. And I actually already did this with like a cat paw bookmark. So you can see, I don't know if you can see this. This is like the progression.
Yeah.
Um, this and this was all done with AI. So this was like the first one, and it didn't have like the paw pads and things like that. So it's like not really that great. And then this is the second one where it has like the more like tri paw pad. And then you can see like these are too small. So I was like, I want them to be bigger. So this is like the last version of it. But I started with the SVG that looks exactly like this. And what I was struggling with in here was getting it to do like exactly the SVG. It kept syncing things down, so I had to keep going back and forth with AI to like get it to do it correctly. So that's kind of what I did there.
So do you
Um,
find when you're new into this, do you find it's just a lot of trial and error that you just basically test it out or you print it out and then you're like, okay, now I'm going to go back and do this kind of thing?
Yeah, I think like when I was looking at like this first one here, it didn't look at my exact design. And now let me grab like my exact design from the desktop. You're gonna see all kinds of chaos here. But this is like what my exact design looked like. It's kind of hard to tell because the arm blends in. But this actually looks like exactly like that. So for me, it's like trial and error. And then what I do is I have skills for all of these. So a skill tells AI exactly what to do. So I'll tell it to remember like how it rounded these or how it did certain things and then add that to my skill so that it does it exactly like how I want it next time. So that's kind of like my process is trial error, record what worked well into my skill, and then the next time it just automatically does it how I want it to do it.
So you're, for those who don't know what a skill is, can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so the skill is basically instructions that tell AI how to do something. So for instance, with this like green gem, I could say something like whenever we have gems, make them green and it will have like the little code snippet of like what that should be. And it will and when I invoke the skill, so when I go over here and say, let's exit this really quickly because I don't need this. I say something like you can actually like do slash and you can bring I have all these different skills here. You can actually bring the skill in and say like in this skill do this thing and it will do it exactly how you wanted it to be done because you have recorded how you want it to be done.
So how do you create this skill in the first place?
Yeah, so I there's an actual skill for creating skills. It's very meta.
Yeah.
So you can invoke the skill to create a skill, and then that will start to record all of your stuff for your skill for you.
So it's really just kind of prompting, and the skills that I've created have been just me going into Claude and just saying, I want to create a skill. And I've done a lot like YouTube skills of SEO and stuff like that, of creating a skill and then just going back and, like you're saying, iteration. I think that's the key is like it's trial and error. You're going through and you're iterating, you're improving a little bit. But what I like from what you just said is that you're going back in and you're saying, you're kind of documenting what you've learned and you're going back in and improving the skill, which I don't always do myself a lot. I don't always think about that. But I really like that idea of going back and saying, hey, now that we know this, go in and update the skill. So next time it's a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. And this is I'm very lazy when it comes to AI. I'm like I don't even want to go and like find my own my own files. So I told it bring up my skill for me. And so you can see like this is for my bookmarks. So you can see like it's recorded all like this is Python that it's using within Blender. So you can see it's recording all the different things that I want to continuously do, and it has like a checklist down here to make sure that it does it.
So you don't know Python, right?
No.
Okay.
I can read some of it. Like I've had computer science courses and things like that, but I don't look at the code related to the 3D printing stuff at all, really.
So how do you, and I always kind of, whenever I'm teaching, I always talk about that of like, it's not necessarily knowing the code anymore. It's specifically, I think you still need to know the concepts. You still need to know like the different components or the different things that it takes to be able to create it. Like, what's your thoughts on that of like somebody who's just is overwhelmed by code? I remember one time at DevLearn, somebody came, I was doing like one of those demo fests and I had built something custom and I showed them, "Oh, I built it in code." And immediately they're like, "Nope, it's code." And they walked away. And so it was like those people who are afraid of code or like don't want anything to do with code, what would you tell them when they're getting into something like vibe coding?
Yeah, I think I don't it's less about knowing code and more about like have you heard the term systems thinking?
Yeah.
So I think it's like when you do learn code, and I think the positive of learning code is you learn a lot about systems thinking, and that means how different systems impact each other. So for instance, like you learn like how to change colors of buttons, and like when I do this thing, then this thing changes like in the actual system or the front end, or like the different things impact each other. And I think a good example of this is, I'll actually share my screen again. Sorry for people seeing the infinite screens when I when I change, but I actually have this simulation for 911 operators. So this is to practice their skill in understanding who to dispatch and when, like medical, police, fire. And within this, one of the things I was really struggling with is this is like a gated kind of a thing. And I'm going to just go to the next screen so you can see what it looks like. You listen to the call and then you make a decision, but it's gated, so I can't if I'm vibe coding this and working and iterating on it, I can't jump forward to the next screens to make decisions and changes and see them. So I was like thinking, like, from a systems perspective, there's a solution for this. So what I did was I vibe coded this dev panel. So this dev panel actually lets me like jump forward to screens and be able to see, like, oh, like I see the screen, I want to change this thing, versus having to click through the whole thing the whole time. And so I think like this is something I learned through coding, right? Because I learned like, oh, this is something that we can do. We can skip ahead with coding. Like there's all these different things. I think when you know what's possible, it's easier to do it yourself in vibe coding, because like this is something I definitely could have done even before there was AI in vibe coding. And I think it's because of like me being able to code and do these things.
Yeah, we're not building anything new. I mean, everything that vibe coding is doing is stuff that we've been able to do or web developers have been able to do for years. So it's interesting that I mean, it's still even with those web developers, they still had to understand concepts of debugging or going through and not having to go through the entire simulation, kind of like, and so creating like dev tools or stuff to help you get through some of that scenario a little bit quicker too. So it's those kinds of that kind of mindset that I think is important for people still to this day, even with vibe coding, to have as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like, and I think it's a core of what we do in learning as well. Like what we do in our jobs is solve problems. It's not even necessarily just about like building things to help people perform better in their jobs. It's about working backwards from business problems. And like if you are gated in this and you can't go forward, it's like, well, that's a problem. And like, what way could I solve it? Like, what's the best solution to that? And I could use like my dev tools, my actual dev tools in here, but I was like, I don't want to have to open that every time and do all these. So it's like there's like so many different ways you can get to the end result that you want. And this was like one way to do it. So I can just like jump to
Yeah.
the different screen.
Which is funny you keep bringing that up because, like, I always say that web developer or any type of developer are lazy because they will come up with a way that, I don't want to do this. So I'm going to come up with another way to be able to get around doing that, which is honestly not lazy. But it's just funny how we come up with that kind of stuff just to not do something that we don't want to do.
I'm the same way. Even at work, there was a project that I was working on. I needed to do user interviews for like 21 people. And so I had them all like opt in on like a kind of like a survey type thing. Yeah. And they responded. And I used like Copilot Cowork to
Hmm.
basically look through all of like the emails, what they signed up for specifically, everything, and then put it all into an Excel with like their choices, their time zones, their teams, like all that kind of stuff. And then I had AI schedule me all of their meetings and write the body of the meeting, what they chose, like everything for me. Because the last thing I want to do is like administrative work that I can have like AI do on my behalf. Because like
Yep.
for me, doing that work is not like good time spent for me. Like it's not building my skills, it's not adding value for me to do that. So like when I think about using AI for vibe coding or for anything else like that example, it's about it's giving me time to focus on my own skills and using AI to do the things that I either don't think I should have skills in, or that are like more administrative.
So how do you when you talk to people about AI that are worried about AI, I think that's one of the things is maybe they do like the administrative type of stuff, and they're worried about AI taking their job. What's some of the advice that you would give someone like that?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. Um, because I think there's always going to be some level of administrative type stuff where AI isn't going to maybe necessarily be the thing that drives that. I think it's about working backwards from like w- like where is it going to add value? Because there's still things that are administrative that we do that also require our own skills. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah,
That we're doing like within AI itself. I think like a good example maybe is with like this dashboard that I created here. Like there's still administrative things that I have to do like within this dashboard that I'm kind of like having AI do on my behalf, but it's still kind of like administrative, like like changing, like even changing sizes and different things of things is kind of an administrative task, but you have to like have AI, like you're telling AI to do it, so it still feels kind of administrative. Like
yeah.
it's not
At least
building my skill or using my skills necessarily.
yeah. For me, it's like instead of having to do the small little things, it's I'm able to direct it in a lot more or like a in a greater way. So I there was a time where I was leading a team of like 5 developers, and we were building everything custom. And so as we were building it custom, I had to be the one to say, okay, this is the framework we're going to use. This is how we're going to build it. So I'm not necessarily the one doing it, but I'm the one that was directing it. And I was still at that point, I was doing a lot of administrative kind of things of like following up and asking, reviewing what they've created and asking them to go back and change it, different things like that. And I see AI, and I don't know if you see it the same way, but I see AI kind of like that team of developers that I'm now the director of that. And so, yes, it can do a lot of those kind of administrative tasks, but instead, we kind of take a step back. And now we're the director overseeing a lot of different people doing different work, and we're still kind of guiding it and saying, okay, change this, add this, do that.
Yeah.
So to me, it actually adds a lot more work to our, I mean, at least to me, it adds a lot more work for me to be able to do that. But now I'm able to create more and expand upon it more. So I don't know.
I
Like you're
feel
saying, it opens up a lot of possibilities as well.
Yeah, I feel the same way because there's so much that we can do now. And I think especially like in the instructional design realm of things that like I wanted to do, like I could have never created this dashboard without AI because I mean I could, but it would have taken me like months versus like an hour. Like it's like very different. Would you say like what do you feel like is the thing that you most commonly use it for? Like, is there something that you most commonly use AI or
Yeah.
even vibe coding for?
It's right lately, it's been like coming up with different solutions for tools that I've actually gotten rid of. So it's almost like, okay, I had an invoicing tool that I was paying $20 a month. And so I didn't want to pay $20 a month just for an invoicing tool that I'd use like very rarely. It was just every once in a while, but I needed it every once in a while. And so I vibe coded an invoicing tool just for me. Also, my family we like to go to Disneyland. So I wanted to vibe code an app that gave us a countdown of the next time we're going to Disneyland. So it's just like little solutions like that that I'm using it a lot for. But lately, it's been like a lot of my e-learning has been just vibe coding different interactions. Um, and knowing code still helps, I think, like knowing those concepts, but it's been more of like, okay, now I'm able to direct it and get it done quicker than I was before. So
Yeah,
I
I
don't know. Do you find the
agree.
same thing or?
Yeah, I think it's like things that maybe aren't necessarily even everyday problems, but like the things that you're talking about, like, oh, like I am paying for this thing or I'm doing this thing, and like I could actually do it for free now with my subscription, with my Claude
Yeah,
Code subscription, and
with your
I
cloud.
kind of
Yeah,
feel the same way. Like even with my 3D print stuff, I used to have a 3D printing business, and I had a subscription to create models for what I was like selling. And now I'm like, if I wanted to get back into that, like I would never pay for that service again. Like I would just do it the way that I'm doing it through Blender, or I would create an app that does it for me.
Yeah, and I think that's key. I mean, you said it right there at the very beginning was like if there's a problem, whether it be within your own kind of personal life or a challenge or something like that, then you could use vibe coding or you could just use like AI in general to help you like make that faster or just or to create something a solution that you want in your own way instead of having to pay for a service that gets like 50% there but not quite all the way there, but you can just design it in your way how you want it. And to me, I mean, that offers a lot of possibilities.
I love exactly what you said about the how you want it. And I keep telling people this is like what people say on social media, like we have free will. Like we have free will, we can do whatever. And so like even with this project solves something that I wish I could have done before I had AI. And I was like, you know what? No one is kind of, at least on personal projects, right? No one is stopping us from being able to show how our training saves money for a company or makes money for a company. So like part of like what I wanted to show with this is like, well, now with AI, I'm recording in this project here how people are answering every question, and I have that tied to a monetary amount because we can see like how their decisions impact the business. And so if we can see how their decisions impact the business, we can show leadership or whoever like that's why creating practice is so important. You don't want to spend $62,000 on mistakes, right? If you can avoid it, if you can upskill someone before they ever go into the job. And so that's what I wanted to show with this is like here's the cost of people like missing these answers. Like this is for very specific answers. And then like if we can know that, then we could also kind of see like what answers are they missing. So for instance, like this is one that's ranked high for clearly ambiguous, insufficient info. So that means like the 911 calls that they're hearing are ones that are ambiguous and don't have enough information, but they're still like over triaging and sending someone out even when it's maybe not needed. And so we can see that might be something we want to create more training on, or at least it gives us information to see like what people are missing so that we can dive deeper to see if it's a training problem.
Yeah, I like that because you're not waiting for the solution to be fed to you. You're basically coming up with a solution, and then you're feeding it to maybe leadership or whoever to buy off on that. And it's almost I always whenever I did stuff like that, it was almost like giving them the candy to say, "Hey, let's go make this is how we're gonna make whatever." But it's like just showing them the exciting part about it of like this is what's possible to not wait for permission to do it almost. I mean, you have to take into consideration, what your organization allows and such. But I think sometimes people need to see it. They need to see what's possible before they buy off completely on that. Okay, let's go down this route. So I don't know if you found that same thing in your like your company or your work history or whatever.
Yeah, I think like for me, and particularly at Amazon, Amazon is very data driven, as you know. And like for
Mhm.
me, whenever I went into a stakeholder conversation and I had data showing like we should do something in a specific way, like if I said it without the data, people would be like, how do we know this? Like, it can't just be based on your expertise, right? There has to be some kind of like customer data or data. So that's something that's always been like a selling point to get like buy-in from someone on something. So if we wanted to create 1 to 2 scenarios, we have data showing this is costing us this much for just this amount of people who've gone through it, however, 32 people. Like, we should probably do more scenarios so that we can keep training people on this thing. Um, so I think like having something like this is helpful. And I think like with AI now, we should open ourselves up to all possibilities. So before we couldn't do something like this, but now we can do so many things. So it's like before you even start a project, think about like what data do you want to capture to prove that learning worked or didn't work, or even before you start a project, like do you want to like what would you want to see like ticket numbers that came in for something that prove that you need training, escalations, like different things like that. We can get that data more easily and visualize it, and then pair that with like other things like that we don't like people have never gone through training on it, or other data to be able to say like yes we should work on this. So I think it's like really now anything's possible. Like we should be able to explore those things.
And that goes back to like how, I don't know if you get this question a lot, but like how do you learn everything that you're doing right now? Like what what's the approach that you take to be able to learn how to do all this? Like xAPI, you've been talking about Blender, different things like that. What's your approach for just diving in and basically learning any type of concept that you want to learn?
Yeah, I think the most important thing, and like what makes me successful is the skills that I had before AI. So like I've been using xAPI since 2017 or 2018. And so like I don't know that I can't answer this with certainty, but I don't know that if someone didn't understand xAPI that they would be able to do something like this. So for me, like what makes AI powerful is using my own skills and understanding paired with AI to like superpower and supercharge myself. And even in the 911 project, like my skills in writing learning objectives, coming up with things like is this something what we need practice on, something that we need performance support on, like trying to understand those things. Like in this project I have this full learning plan. Before there was AI, I would always do learning plans, right? And so I have this like full learning plan here that it basically it lets me work really quickly. So for instance, like I know how to write learning objectives. So if I say here's the problem that we're trying to solve to AI, and here's how I write learning objectives. What learning objectives would I need to write to solve this problem? And I know what good looks like from like that standpoint because of my own skills. So I look at it, I iterate until it gets to a point where it actually like makes sense. And then I look at things like, okay, if someone is able to do this learning objective, how can I measure success? And I know xAPI, so I'm thinking, okay, like what would that look like from a practice standpoint? So I need people to be able to identify verbal and tonal cues from a caller to indicate which priority dispatch protocol to go with. So in here, like you're actually, I'll go to the next one. In here you're actually doing that. So like you're actually listening to the call, you're making a decision, I'm recording it, and then like you go over here and you can see like how that costs. So it's kind of like you're taking all your skills and you're working with AI with those skills to build out like a full project. um, so it's like you do everything you would normally do in like a normal project. Like I wrote this whole entire learning plan before I ever built anything, before I ever did anything with xAPI, and planned it. Um, and then just like went through and started like writing all the content and the design and everything like that.
I really like that because I did have someone comment on my YouTube channel not too long ago because I've been posting a lot about AI and how to like vibe code different learning interactions. And I won't specifically say the comment, but it was something like, AI is making us dumb or something.
Yeah.
But I think you just proved them wrong, though, is that you still have to understand those concepts and skills, and you still have to understand what good learning objectives are. AI can help you extract that. Like to me, I've always kind of leaned more on the learning development because I didn't actually train as an instructional designer. So I came into this field as a web developer. I was a Flash developer at that time. That will date me. And so I came into this field as a Flash developer, and so I never really spent a lot of time. I've picked up a lot, but so when I was at Amazon, I had to go through a lot of documentation. And this documentation was really hard for me to understand. But using something like AI could help me kind of clarify that or teach that for me. But I still, like you're saying, I still have to then understand. I knew at that point some instructional design. So I still have to be able to apply it to that. So I don't think it makes us dumb. I think it actually enhances our abilities in a lot of ways. And so it's something like I understand development concepts and I'm able to do more because of that. So it doesn't mean that I don't need to understand development concepts. It means that I need to still understand that to be able to become really effective with AI, I think.
Yeah, and like you're working backwards from a problem that you're trying to solve. And like like even in my example, like I know from like a learning standpoint, the closer that we can get people to a realistic practice, like that's going to help them practice safely in the most accurate way before they do it on the job. And so for instance, Like that's a skill I learned in learning, like through my master's program and through like just like, um, my expertise like in the field. And so like in designing this, there's like all kinds of things. So you listen to like, can you hear this?
I can't. No.
Oh, you can't. I don't think I have the
Yeah.
audio on. But if you listen to this, it sounds kind of like a real 911 call, like the way that the audio is done, like talking and stuff through that. And even with AI, what I did was, how can I make this sound like a real 911 call? So I was like going through with AI and I was like, okay, I know I could use like ElevenLabs for voice, but it's not going to sound realistic. And I want it to sound really realistic. So then I was like, oh, I could use AI and I know how to do audio editing to help me figure out the settings in Adobe Audition for audio editing to make it sound like this. So, like, the problem I'm trying to solve is to get this to sound realistic. I have these other skills like audio editing already, so I know how to use the tool. And then I'm just having AI help me think through the different like voices, even the settings in ElevenLabs, like what settings I should use for the voices to make them sound like more panicked, in the voices in Audition and things like that to get to my end goal. So I think when you know what your end goal is for something, plus you have the skills, plus you have AI, like that's like the perfect good storm, not bad storm.
Yeah. But it also takes, I think, to go along with that, just I think you're really good at this is experimenting, just going in and just, iterating. And you post on your LinkedIn all the time about here's my status update for this project I'm working on. And so it's not something, and this is something that's I always try to emphasize is it's iteration. It's exploring, but it's iteration of like, how do I learn this? Well, I just go in and I play with it and I test it out and then I iterate on it and I say, okay, well, this isn't working. Let me change this. Let me do that until I get to the point where I'm then sharing about it. So those are the kinds of things I think would be helpful to go along with that. But I like what you said too, is just having that vision, that clear vision before of like, okay, I want it to get to this point. Maybe it's not completely clear, but you at least have a goal. And then you use AI to help you, okay, fill in the gaps of like, what am I missing? How can I do this? And that could help instruct you as well along the way.
Yeah, 100%. And like even with this like call simulation practice activity, there's things I don't like about it and it's not done. But what I'll end up doing is I'll create the other activities and I'll have them kind of have the same look and feel. And then once I see them all next to each other side by side, I'll make decisions on like things that I want to change because like they feel very static or like there's something I can't put my finger on right now. And so sometimes I won't really know. I know something has to change, but I'm like, I can come back to that and do it later. And it is very much an iterative process. So, like, a lot of times I'll post stuff that looks like pretty ugly or like unfinished. And I'm like, I know in my mind, like, where I want to get it to. And like, you just have to keep iterating and going. And then you
Yeah.
learn. And I think you build skills that way too, because then you figure out what worked and what didn't. Just like even with my Blender example, like I'm building my skills in there and I'm also building my own skills on what to tell AI to like make my projects better too.
Do you find that it like helps you learn more when you share? Like if you share online, do you get feedback from people to like help guide the direction, or do you find just sharing in general helps you kind of learn yourself?
Like 110%. And on this particular project, this was built with the Mighty MCP so that it connects to Mighty, which like you can then have this like embedded in Rise. And I was sharing this with John, who's one of the, I think he's like the head engineer of like all of the Mighty stuff. And he was giving me so much feedback. He's like, can I hop on a call with you like really quickly? Because like, I think like this could be different or this could be different. And so when I share online or like even just like send something to someone, I learned so much about like what I could do differently. And then that makes me also work differently next time because once you learn something once, you can apply it to like different situations. So for instance, like with the Mighty MCP, um, I didn't realize like you could have like a field where you can turn this on and off within like because you can create this into a template. So people can download my thing and they can actually like hit a toggle to have this like never even show up, but then they could turn it back on if they wanted to. And I was like, oh, now I know how that I can do that, and I can like have things turn on and off in the tool, and like and then because I know that and I know how to do it, I can apply that in strategic ways next time on my next project.
And that's where I think it's key in like any type of learning is just to keep yourself being curious. Like I don't feel like I've always wanted to learn iOS, and I always like I'm so curious on like iOS development and like how to, what these different components do and different things like that. So I think that's a huge key, and like the piece of advice I would give to anyone who's just starting is just to be curious. What can I do? What can I create? Any other kind of, I know I don't want to keep you too long, but any other kind of final feedback that you would give, especially to someone that's just starting out with vibe code or any type of AI development?
Yeah, I think like one of the most important things is to know what your skills are, know what your gaps are, and asking for feedback. Like, I think that's probably the thing that helps me the most, that we just talked about, is because when I first started learning xAPI, I literally, and I was telling someone this the other week, I reached out to, I don't know if it was like the Learning Pool people or whoever, who are the people who used to own Learning Locker? Because I use Learning
Uh,
Locker.
yeah, it was no, yeah, it's Learning Pool that owns them now, where they bought
Yeah.
it out. I don't know who owned it before, but
I don't know. I can't remember, but
yeah.
like for example, I didn't know anything about xAPI. I literally went on their forums and I was like, "Who can get on a call with me?" and who can get on a call with me and tell me how to do this thing, or like teach me how to do this thing. Like for me, when I don't know something, and I have a passion and a deep want and need to know it, I will go and just like find the people who know it, and and like you have to look at like all different creative ways to get that feedback and to learn it. And it can be asking people on LinkedIn, it can be reaching out directly to people, it could be using AI. Like I think you want to know what your goal is and where your gaps are, and like work backwards from that. Like that's what's made me the most successful. I didn't know any of this. Like I don't like, it's because of other people, and it's because of getting creative with ways to like learn these things to build my own skills.
Awesome. And I just do want to do a plug-in to kind of wrap up here. You will be speaking at DevLearn, and you will be at the Storyline and Rise Pro Lab, and you'll be talking about the Mighty plugin. You've talked about it a couple of times, but your session will be about that. Anything you kind of want to hint at that, or give people like a little bit of a preview of what's going to happen during that session? I know we're still a couple months out. Yeah.
So I plan to have like this full project that I'm working on as something to show there. But like two things I really want to talk about that I think are very powerful is like, well, actually three things. One is the data perspective and how we can like use Mighty to easily capture SCORM data and xAPI data. I know not everyone's using xAPI, so I don't want to like alienate anyone. So I just want to talk about data in general. And then scalability, like how can we use different tools like Mighty to scale design in a way where we can still be very creative. And that leans into things like what I love using it for is creating these like rich practice activities, because I feel like with AI there's so much that AI can do for performance support for people, where they're really asking AI questions and getting the answers, but it can't really do practice really well. And as instructional designers, one of the key things that where we can add value is creating safe, realistic practice where people can fail and they're not failing on the job and costing our businesses money. So I think like I really want to talk about like how we can create these rich, realistic practice.
I'm looking forward to it. And I think we've talked about it, but I also want you part of that showdown, or the AI showdown, where we're actually going to come and create, and people are going to vote on like what we create in real time as well. So I think that's going to be fun.
No
But thank
pressure.
you, Mel. Yeah, no pressure, no pressure. Oh, like Destry and I were just on a call on Tuesday, and we kind of pitted ourselves from like ChatGPT and Claude. He was using ChatGPT, I was using Claude. And with the prompt he gave me, I feel, I don't want to say this out loud, but I feel like I lost. And
Oh,
so I'm like, now I'm so like pumped up to like, okay, DevLearn, you're going down. Like Claude's got to make a comeback here. So
I think
But
we have to have restrictions. No one can use Fable because I feel like if you use Fable, like it's like game over.
although that's the funny thing is I was using Fable and
Oh,
it's
you were?
still, yeah. But it was basic. I think ChatGPT did better in the visuals, and I think that's why it was a basic. We got to come up with some good prompts and stuff. So I'm gonna come up with like a whole vibe coded game interaction that will show like the score and everything. I got to think through that a little bit on there. But all right, so Mel, just a final thing. Where can people find you?
Yeah, definitely primarily on LinkedIn. So you can look me up, Melissa Milloway or Mel Milloway. I should come up, and then my website's right at the top of my LinkedIn. So that's a good way to get to it if you want to see some of the stuff I've worked on.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Also, if you want to check out more, go ahead and make sure that you like and subscribe to this video as well. But that's all that we have. Thanks,
I'll
everyone.
solve it. Spit one prompt and the whole squad evolves quick. Vibe code, baby. Watch what we code. Type one line and I'm switching your mode. Hey!